nothing work related. So I am a community psychologist by training. I come to evaluation, not by accident. A lot of people say they came to evaluation by accident. It was actually very purposeful. I knew I did not want to be an academic. No offense, Leah, sorry. I just knew I didn't have the personality for that. So I chose evaluation. I have been in business since 2004. And our tagline is partnering for social change. So this presentation comes at a very interesting time for me. I am in the midst of rebranding. So hence the beautiful new logo that you cannot see, the brand new podcast that I hope you will check out called Community Possibilities, really leaning into our tagline, partnering for social change. I do a lot of work with community coalitions and collaboratives. I do have what I call the public health work stream because as Maddie will tell you, you can't be in Atlanta without getting pulled into the public health world. So that's kind of the quick and dirty about me. So the first slide that you cannot see is once upon a time, and it's like me with my watch. I had this little baby idea of starting my business. There's a backstory there, but we don't have time to go into that today. But I had a really small goal. I was very nervous, as some of you might have been when you started your business. And I had a friend of mine said, well, how much do you need to make anyway? And I said, well, I promised Dan I could pay my school loan back. Well, how much is that? And I think it was, I don't know. I really don't remember. Maybe it was $800 a month. Let's just go with that. And she said, well, how many contracts would that be? So, within a week probably of, printing out my really crappy first cards from Vistaprint and hanging out my shingle, I had my first contract and off we ran to the races. So that's kind of where I am. So when I first started, how I tracked my time was really pretty simple. It was just, no joke, paper and pen. Then I got like super sophisticated. And then I started using an Excel spreadsheet. But let me back up and talk about why do you want to track your time? So some of what I was going to talk about today, Gail talks about in her book, which I'm sure you all have, Consulting, Startup, and Management. So there's Matt grabbing his. Like, I used to have 2 copies. And I think somebody absconded with the other one. I don't know if you guys do this. You go to the conference and then you end up, buying multiple books. You come home and you find out you've got it. So I'm going to move my thing.
And you actually gave it to me.
Oh, you're the one that has my book.
I do.
All right. Well, that explains that. Okay. Well, you can keep it. I don't need to. So some of what I was going to talk about, sorry, I'm trying to bring up my PowerPoint here because who knows, maybe then I got to bring up Zoom. So maybe we'll just go for this. All right. So where was I? Okay. So why do you track your time? So one of the things Gail talks about in her book is you track your time because you don't want to get sued. You've signed a contract with someone and you've said you were going to do some certain thing. So you want to, be accountable to your clients, of course. You also want to track your time because you want to know whether or not you're making, 5 cents, $5, $500. You need to have some idea about how much time you're spending on each and every project to know how much money that you're making. So some of you may use QuickBooks or Quicken or some other kind of software, and it runs a profit and loss. It will run a profit and loss statement. So you want to use that. You want to pay attention to that to know whether or not your company is making any money. I know one of the things that I was able to do as I developed my business was really get an understanding of how much time it was going to take me to do certain things. And that's really served me well when it comes to putting a contract together, because I can pretty much tell you how long it's going to take us to develop a scope of work or develop a survey, write a report, all of those things. So then it makes putting contracts together a lot easier. So let's see what else. It also track why you want to track your time or have your subcontractors track the time is, for the same reason. It's really all about, accountability and growing yourself as a business. So one of the things that we also do is we calculate, a billable rate, and Gail talks about in her book too. And when you're just starting out, and Matt's talked about this a lot, other people have talked about it a lot in the IC chats, you may not have a lot of overhead, and that's a great thing. You want to keep that low because you don't want to have to pass on that cost to your clients if you don't have to. But your billable rate takes into consideration the number of the hours that you're going to put in, plus the things that you can charge directly to the client. So let's talk about that for a second. So what can you legitimately charge as something that's billable? So anytime you put in on the project, so whether that be developing a survey or a measure or doing data analysis or writing report, things that are directly tied to the project. Non-billable things are things that you legitimately can't pass on to your clients. Like I don't pass on a portion of our rent. I've seen some contractors do that, and I don't know, we can talk about that if you want. So, accounting fees, attorney, if you got one, I've never had one. So there's some things that are billable, some things are non-billable. Those things all have to do with your billable rate. And it's different. Like my billable rate is different from, say, my research associate that I have. We have different, I have different expectations. I have administration of the company that I have to do. So, so we talked about WISE, we talked about billable rate. Okay, so tracking your time. So I started by telling you that I started off tracking my time, paper pencil way, and then I switched to an Excel spreadsheet to track my time. And then we grew and we kept growing. So it got to be, we just needed something else. We needed a more efficient system. So we used a program that some of you may know called Toggl. And that was free at the time. I don't know if it still is, but that's really kind of cool. And you just, you just literally start and stop your time whenever you're working on a different piece of a project or a different client. So we used Toggl for quite a while. And then we grew some more, and we really needed more of a project management system. So now we use a program called FunctionFox, and that's what we're using today. So what I like about FunctionFox is we can take our contracts, our statement of work that outlines every deliverable we have with every date, and we can break that down by who is going to be responsible for that task. So it's time management, but it's also a project management system. Thanks, Matt, for putting that in the chat. I appreciate that. So, so like I said, all of the deliverables are in there by person, and we can run reports. We know whether or not we are on target or either over or under for any given client on any different particular deliverable. So we've been using FunctionFox for a couple of years. It's not horribly expensive, I don't think. And as we've shifted, I mentioned I'm in the middle of shifting our business. I think I mentioned that. And so we've even added a couple of our subcontractors. We're paying for them to have access to FunctionFox as well, so they can enter their time.
Interesting.
So that is what we are using now. I'm trying to remember, was there anything else that I wanted to talk to you about? There probably is, but I think that's kind of the gist of it.
if you want, I can throw questions at you that are coming in the
Yeah, that'd
chat.
be great, because I can't really see, and I'm gonna.
Maddie, that's okay. And we can work this. I'm going to keep recording, folks. So just know if you talk, you're going to be on screen. If you have a problem with that, you should be aware. Anyhow, Maddie asked the question: how do you bill for emails that only take 2 to 3 minutes each, but add up over time? And I responded. I'm curious how you think about this, but when I go back and I look at what I did, because I'm not great at tracking time, but I'm consistent at doing it. But I always end up having to go back and think, what did I do 3 days ago when I didn't do my time for the day? I have bad habits, guys. All right. So when I do that, I look at what did I do? I go and I look at my sent mail, and if I have an email that maybe took 2 to 3 minutes, but the reality is it probably took 10 to 15 because I thought about it, and then I drank my coffee. And I got up and moved around, and I came back and I finished that email. It usually takes more. So I generally will bill for 10 to 15 minutes. And I can't remember who did it. This question came up in the E group, the listserv, and this is what other people have confirmed they do as well. That they will block it for about 10 or 15 minutes, but whatever you think is appropriate. And then because those emails do add up over time, and when pressed by clients, but the other people have put, they say, it's totally legitimate to do that. What are your thoughts on that, Ann?
I mean, and I'm not telling you that I'm like an attorney, who's like, and apologies to any evaluators who used to be attorneys in a past life, right? But I'm not like, hitting the Staples button every time I'm talking to someone. Sometimes I get busy and I forget to hit the little time clock on whatever piece of the puzzle that I'm working on. But if it's, just an email, I may track, I may just put down like 5 minutes. That's kind of a minimum. I mean, again, if I'm not using the time clock, I'll probably just put like 5 minutes if that's all it took.
One of the questions came in from Vanessa, and she was asking about contractors who bill for the hours they spend writing their proposals. She thinks that her bid would no longer be competitive. What do you think it's common and advisable to bill for proposal development? I'm going to let Ann answer this, but I will say that's part of what the conversation I want to have next week about pro bono and why I don't bill for that. But go ahead, Ann.
That's really interesting, Matt, because I build that I build some fat into the contract, if you will, and that's kind of part of it. So I try to gain that. Now, if it's like if it's a potential new client, and I don't know how you do this with some of yours. There's no like money for my time. I don't necessarily, it depends on the relationship, really, I guess I should say. So I'm not charging them to help them with their grant proposal, for example, provided all I'm having to do is maybe write a couple of paragraphs for the evaluation section, or maybe pull a little bit of data for them. If it was writing the whole grant, like I think you do sometimes, then we would be having a different conversation. But if it's like a renewal kind of thing, but yeah, I am going to spend several hours writing a contract, then I bake that into the overall cost of the project.
No, and so this is my business model is to help people write the evaluation plan section of their proposal. And I don't want a barrier to entry. I don't want people to not want to work with me because of some fee that I'm going to charge them to put together. Frankly, I put together, I thought, a pretty sophisticated evaluation plan for this project that could yield $30,000 to $40,000 a year in a matter of a couple of hours. I mean, you learn how to do these things fairly quickly when you understand what's needed and who the audience is for the people who are going to be reading these. And so I'm not going to charge for that because I want to work with these people. I want to develop relationships and have a chance to work with them down the road. So when you say build some fat into it, I just figure I have time set aside for proposal and business development. And so that's the way that I think about that. I'm just going to say this is atypical, but I do have one funding agency, the Department of Defense, that will allow my clients to pay me to write their proposals for them, and then they will reimburse them if the grant is funded. And that is not typical, but I do have situations where, so it's worth the question. Make sure you understand your relationship with your clients on that, but it was my client who came to me and said, I need you to help me write this proposal because I don't know how to do it by myself. It's a client that doesn't really have great grant writing resources. And she reached out to the program officer, and the program officer says, pay him and we'll reimburse it if you get the grant. And they did, and they repaid me. And I thought, well, isn't that great? Not typical. So we got a couple of comments in here. I don't know if you've read Margaret's yet. And then Maddie responded to, but
No,
I
because
haven't
they're
gotten to
coming up
that.
and I couldn't catch them, so you'll have to catch me up. I'm trying to.
All right, well, I'll read it to you. Margaret asks, has anyone found a way to get Outlook electronic calendar to communicate automatic with its spreadsheet or the toggle function Fox
Ooh.
software? I really get tired of copying my billable calendar time into a spreadsheet. I haven't done it, but my colleague Tom, we use Toggle. He has coordinated his Google Calendar with Toggle. So that is one thing that we figured out.
Oh, that's fancy.
Yeah, and I'm a little nervous about that because I'm not entirely sure if what I put in my Google Calendar is always reflective of real work. I don't know.
So Matt, how do you guys like Toggle?
It's working for us, and we started to look at in some different things. The thing that I like most about it is there's 5 people, and it's free for 5 people. When you get to 6, they want to charge you $10 per person per month. And I mean, that's growing pains. I should just need to get over myself, but I don't like to pay for things I feel like should be free. But Toggle seems fine for now.
That's about what we're paying for Function Fox. I think there might be a base cost. I should know that, but that's why I have an office manager to keep track of those details. Because when you grow, you kind of, I don't know, because Matt, you're kind of in a growing phase too. You have to let go of some of the weeds sometimes. So I probably should know that, but I do know that it's like $10 per person per month. Now, as I add subcontractors, because I was telling Matt before you guys came on, that I'm switching from having staff to having subcontractors. And I think the great thing is that I'll be able to, the business can shrink or grow as it needs to. There's some other reasons for doing that, but Matt, I'm trying to decide if it's even worth at this point me pulling up my slides or if I should just send them to you to have you share.
Well, definitely, I can share them, and we can send them out to everybody after the fact. I'll probably turn them into a PDF so that they email easier.
Okay.
I have questions. These are things that I know are things I think about. I think I've resolved some of these questions, but I think there's sorts of things that people might be asking themselves. I don't frequently bill my clients on my hours, but I do track my hours for the purposes of understanding how I spent my time.
Correct.
The way I bill my clients is based upon a set amount. So I start and I do a costing exercise before I get into when I get into a contract. And so maybe the contract ends up being $10,000 a year. And it's easy enough for my clients to just pay $2,500 every 3 months. And that's what we do. And I talk about in my invoices, and we have a process for quarterly reports on what we did, but I don't share my hours with them unless they ask for it, because they're going to be all over the board. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have any best strategies?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I do. I cost out. I have to have some place to start. So if you ask, I don't know about everybody else's experience, but typically I usually ask, do you have a budget in mind? Folks, you really don't want to share that, right? Because they're afraid that consultants are going to go straight to whatever that top number was. And I totally get that. But I think EJ Davidson said one time about, you need to know whether or not you're building a Harley or a moped. And I always use that line, like, you got to give me some start. But aside from that, I kind of do that, Matt. I lay it out based on what I think it's going to take per deliverable. We come up with an amount, we agree upon that amount, we set an invoice schedule, usually by quarter. That works well for most, but we don't go over it. So even though I based it on hours, I'm not billing the hours that we did. I'm billing against that fixed price cost. So I really consider them fixed price contracts. It's on me to make sure I hit those target goals. Sometimes we're over, sometimes we're under, but as long as we're overall doing pretty well, then I don't really worry about it. So I think we actually use the same process.
Here's one that I don't have an answer for, and I haven't resolved this one, and I'd love it for you, Anne, or anybody else want to chime in on this. But let's talk about time for travel, and how we cost that out, how we think about it, because I'm getting ready to put together this cost proposal for my perhaps new clients in Georgia, so I can come hang out with Anne at CASA price. Anyhow, they want me to do focus groups in 4 different school districts in 4 parts of Georgia, in like Northeast, Southeast, all the different corners. And to do that, there's going to be a bit of travel and time to get there. And so there's something that happens on a Sunday night to get there so I can be there on a Monday morning. How should I be tracking my time for that, which is obviously not on task, it's just to get there, versus being there on task and doing the actual focus groups?
If I'm driving in the car, that kind of situation, I'm probably billing my hourly, however long it took. And Georgia is a big state. I have counties that I'm responsible for in South Georgia, and it can take me 4 to 4.5 hours to get there. It can take you an hour to drive across a county. So, yeah, so somebody grew up in Texas. So yeah, you know what I'm saying? It takes 3 days to drive across Texas. So I'm billing those hours. If I'm flying, then it's probably more like a half day of travel time. That's probably what I would do in that situation. And I know when I worked at back in the day when I worked at ICF, I think that was kind of our policy. It was like you could bill like a half day if you were flying.
So you'd bill a half day. So like if I would probably take a half day for Sunday and just say like I need to be there Monday morning. So I would fly. I bill a half day, about 4 hours to the client for travel there on Sunday afternoon, evening, or whatever.
Yep.
Good advice, because I didn't actually know how to do that one.
Yeah, for me, living in San Antonio, I can take an hour to get across town. I don't bill it in if I'm within town, but if it's one where I'm going to be doing, Matt, like you described, where you're going and it's going to take a half a day to go each of these places, I put that into the proposal costs, into the budget at proposal time. But I record all those hours as travel time.
Mm-hmm.
So Julie's got her hand up. She wants to ask a question.
Sorry, actually, I wanted to make a comment on this topic. So before the pandemic, I would travel by air a lot for projects to do data collection. And excuse me, I'm hoping that'll start up again after we emerge from the pandemic. Generally, what I've done for air travel days, and sometimes I've been in transit for literally for 20 or more hours. I will bill for the hours when I really couldn't be doing something else.
Yes.
That's how I look at it. So for example, while I'm on the plane and the plane is at cruising altitude, I can be doing substantive work for that project, such as preparing for a data collection session. So I bill to that project for which I'm traveling, or I could be working on another project for a client, and then I will bill to that client. But then there are those hours where I'm, waiting in an immigration line, or waiting for luggage, or getting into an Uber, or doing something like that, where I really couldn't be working on another project and I really couldn't feasibly be taking desirable personal time. So I consider those to be hours spent on the project for which I'm traveling.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That sounds really, I agree with Kamala. That sounds very fair.
I'm loving this conversation. Travel expenses. This is our whole. We're gonna do a whole IC topic chat on this. I don't know where we haven't done it yet, but yeah, travel expenses. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Sorry to jump in on that. I don't have any questions. Just was thinking travel expenses with the conversations. There was a conversation from a question from Vanessa about, do you invoice for travel expenses? Meals while you're away? Yes, we budget. I do a lot of most of my contracts come in one way or another from sort of probably a federal source of funds. So I always go back to the way, if I were working for the federal government and I had to travel how would they be billing for their time, for their expenses. And so you can have your per diems, and your per diems can actually be regional or local to wherever you, if you go to Seattle, there's a per
Mhm.
diem cost for being in Seattle, which is different than what would be in Chicago or in Edwardsville, Illinois, where I am located right now. And so yes, you should be costing that out. I mean, if you have if you need to be on site to work with a client in Atlanta, as I hope to be someday, I will be costing out the expenses to spend time with those people for probably 2 or 3 days per year, and then the different locations that I'd be doing focus groups as well. And those costs are, don't forget about the cost of parking at the airport, the mileage between your home and the airport. Those are costs that you should be thinking about, because those are costs you're taking on. Of course, your flight, your hotel, your rental car, other incidental costs. And those are things that are all spelled out in the, is it GAO, Government Accountability Office? I think that's what it is. But if you type in federal per diem rate 2021, you'll get more than you want to read about all of this from I think it's GAO.
But do you do
But
that, Matt, do you do that with non-federal grants? Like if you're working with a school district or higher ed, do you tell them beforehand, I'm going to bill you for travel and these kinds of expenses? Or is that built into your fixed fee?
So again, this is it depends. More times than not, I'm billing that into my fixed fee, and but that's how I estimate those costs. Internally, like for instance, we've got this big project called STEM Camp, and we've got our folks traveling all over the country from Fairbanks, Alaska to Middletown, Rhode Island. And so we're tracking that for our own sake, but and we're billing those costs back to the federal government for that project. Exactly what they're using. But usually when I'm working with a university, I will estimate my costs to travel and see them once a year. And that's what's built into the overall fee. And that's how it works. Bunch of comments here.
Yeah, and while you're looking at those, I would just say, it really depends on the contract, and and when all else fails, have a conversation. Have a conversation with the client and what their expectations are. I mean, it's amazing what picking up the phone and doing it the old-fashioned way will do.
I expect we'll have a lot less travel because people have learned how to use this mechanism we're using today. And in many ways, I'm not super happy about it, but I'm okay with it because it's increasing my communication with my clients who aren't local. It's increasing communication with my local clients too. If it takes 20 minutes to go see a person and they want to get on the phone or they get on a Zoom real quick, it happens more frequently. So I don't feel Zoom fatigue like other people because I've been doing it for years, but it's just nice that everybody's caught up to the way a lot of us have been working for a long time.
Yeah, so I finally have my slides open. I'm obviously on my phone, so I'm not going to show them to you, but you know what? I amazingly covered, oh my gosh, everything I was going to talk about. I do have a link in the slides though. There's there are lots of different ways to track your time. We've talked about several of them, and there's a link in there if you want to. I think I found the best ways to track your time. So I think that's the only thing I didn't touch on, other than my advice that I give. I hope they don't mind. Some of them are on this call. I call them my younglings. That my advice to eat your frogs in the morning. I don't know about you guys, but there's definitely some things I just kind of don't do for whatever reason. I'm just resistant. I try to do those things in the morning. I guess because frogs taste bad, that you're supposed to eat your frogs in the morning. And so Matt asked me to mention my office hours. So when I say younglings, that's what I mean. I don't know how many months I've been doing this, but somewhere in the middle of the pandemic, I just got this it was on my heart to do something for somebody else other than me. So I meet with, I can't call them young because they're not all super young, but I would just say emerging evaluators every 2 weeks at 11 o'clock. If you're interested, shoot me an email. My email is on the slide deck, but it's aprice@communityevaluationsolutions.com. We meet every 2 weeks a month. for an hour, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We do it by Zoom, and it's a little bit different than this because you're going to come with whatever your problem is. Like, I'm stuck on getting started on my website, or we talk about sometimes like, how do I bill for my time? How do I track? Or everybody set goals in January. So when we meet a week from this Friday, everybody is sharing what their goals were. I've got them all written down. We're good. So it's like an accountability place to help everybody move just that little bit further in their business. So yeah, we have a really small group, but everybody is welcome to that. So any other questions or comments in the?
Yeah, once we get beyond, if we want to talk about time tracking, go ahead. Somebody was.
No, I was saying, Megan said I'm one of the younglings. There's a couple of you guys on. So yeah, so they've actually heard this like talk before.
Well, and Teddy's one of your people
Teddy,
too, isn't he?
Megan, Jessica, Kamala comes sometimes. Yeah, several of the.
That's another. So the thing that's great about, I've never been to that group, but, you know, my understanding for it is it's all about folks who are trying to figure out those early stages of what it's like to be an independent consultant. And I can remember them. Sometimes I feel like it just happened. It's been more than 10 years now, but just like that stress, the pressure of how am I going to make this work? And everything seems so perfect right now, but somebody's going to pull the floor out, the carpet out beneath me or something like that, and all those stressors about that. And I think it would have been nice to have that group back when I was first getting started. I love to ask a couple questions to all of our co-hosts and guest hosts when we get a chance, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this, Anne. If you were just getting started, and this is totally in line with the conversation before, if you were just getting started, like one of your people who attend the office hours, you have really amazing skill set, but you really don't have any clients and you don't really know where to start. What's the first thing you do, and how do you develop that? How do you go from 0 to 60 with an independent consulting practice when you have no foundation?
Do I get more than one thing or just one thing?
You can say as many things as you want. All of these questions are open to interpretation.
So
We had, I think Gail said you don't. I think that was her advice. And then she explained why that. And other people were like, of course you have a foundation. And then we talked about it. So take it however you want to.
So, I think all of us, if we're being super honest, we gravitate to independent consulting for a reason. Maybe we just make really bad employees. Maybe we like to boss people around. Maybe we're just educators and we really love educating people, which is really what consulting is all about, really. Whatever reason you have for doing that, if it's on your heart, then you're probably called to the work, I would say. And so you should listen to that. You should follow that. What is the worst thing that's going to happen? That would be my advice. Ask yourself, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to fall on your ass and you're going to have to get a real job. So why not? None of us probably most of us don't have a business degree. I certainly don't. I'm always really honest about that. But what I do have is a real strong, good, intuitive business sense. So you just start biting that elephant one bite at a time. If you're like, okay, I think I need to track my time, then you figure out how to track your time. If you're not quite sure how to do your taxes, you figure out how to do that, or you hire somebody to do that. You just start. That would be my best advice. And then you have obviously so many resources. You have Gail's book, you have the workshops that Gail used to do that Matt does now. The ICTIG is like an amazing resource. Nobody's competitive. Everybody's really cooperative. Everybody's willing to help you out and ask you questions. Just do it. I hope that's not like brand.
She's Nike. Put one foot in front of the other and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my spreadsheet now to manage the company's budget, I look at it and like, damn, look what I did. I mean, I'm pretty darn impressed with myself on some days. Now I just kind of like, now I just want to go to the beach because it's a lot. It is a lot. You're going to be amazed. You're going to get those first couple of clients. I talked about you, Matt, last week and your little hedgehog thing. I think it was you, right? That's exactly what it is. You know, you get that little wheel turning and then all of a sudden you're flying off the wheel.
That's right. So what Anne's talking about is the idea of the niche is do things you love, do things you're good at, and do things where there's money, right? And if you can find a way to do all those three things at the same time, you're going to be just fine. If you don't love it, don't do it because it's not going to be sustainable. If there's no money, I mean, you better hope something shows up, but that's probably not going to be sustainable. And if you're no good at it, well, you probably never got started.
Yep.
All that being said, one last question for you to kind of conclude it all. Is now, determine whatever you mean, think about that however you want to, but is now a good time to start an independent consulting practice?
I can only answer that question by how busy I am. And my answer would be hell yeah. But be good. Please be good. If you're going to do this, just be good at it because there's a lot of bad evaluation out there and it gives our field a really poor reputation and contributes to people's, evaluation anxiety, right? So if you're going to do it well.
I love it. Well, with that, we're going to conclude the chat for today. I am doing a session next week, same time, same channel. Same bat time, same bat channel?
I hope it's not this channel because this channel did not work well for me.
Well, it works for me. I don't know. I'm going to call it user error on your part, Ann.
Yeah.
And next week's session will be on pro bono strategies. And I already gave away half of the conversation at the beginning when I was talking about my business model and how I think about it. But pro bono is a great way to develop relationships. That's what I'll be talking about. And 2 weeks from now, I'm going to start a core topic series, and those are the topics that we talk about at the pre-conference workshops and other venues. And we'll be doing it on setting your fees, and we talked about that today too. And it's the same old calculation. I'm going to probably add in some new ideas and new slides to it. So it's the most popular thing that was on the YouTube channel